for that. Okay, so for the purpose of everyone, I am Jessica Sawyers and I work for Sunderland Software City. And what we are hoping to do is just kind of link students with industry. So everything to do with STEM, so science, technology, engineering, maths, we're hoping to bridge that gap between schools and industry. So what I've organised this morning is for Dan and Emma from a company called Coatsink to chat to you. So they're just going to talk about the company, the job roles and things like that. And then we will have time for a Q&A at the end of the session. While they are speaking, I'm just going to mute myself and take myself off camera just so I'm not on the screen all of the time. And then, like I say, at the end, we will have a bit of a Q&A and hopefully get some answers to any questions that people may have. So I'll put myself on mute and take myself off camera. I'm not sure who wants to go first. I don't know if you've decided amongst yourselves, but feel free to just chip in. If you do have any questions while they're talking, they have said feel free to kind of stop them in the track. Or if alternatively, if you don't want to interrupt, you could just pop it in the chat and then we can ask them at the end. Okay, right, I'll mute myself now, guys, if you want to take it over.
Cool. I'll just share my screen. I only have a very small little presentation for you guys. I don't know if Dan, you want to start? And then I'll go in after because I have some stuff to show after this.
Yeah, I can go first, no problem. So yeah, I am Dan. I'm a mid-level programmer at Coatsink. I'm sure it's probably fairly obvious at this point that we make games. We're a game development studio. Yeah, you're presumably, as a lot of you are computer science students, you are probably more code focused, perhaps, but there are all kinds of roles in the games industry, and there's always time to change later. So don't ever feel like you are trapped in whichever role you think you're in and the direction that you're going right now, because you're not. There's always time to decide what you want to do. Yeah, how did we get into it? Certainly for me, networking is the most important. It's perhaps not the most ideal way of but it is the way that the world works, that it's very much who you know as well as what you know. If you go out to networking events, I don't know if I think they've moved digital since the pandemic, but Teesside University used to do meetups, didn't they, like twice a year, Emma?
Yeah, they did. And they also host the Animix every year, and they let people network at events there as well.
Yeah, so the most important thing I'd say is, regardless of which role you want to get into, you do have to put in a bit of effort to sort of get your name out there and just try and get involved in the game dev community. There are loads of places online. Game dev is a huge place nowadays. There are companies from like AAA games, you know, your Activisions, your Xboxes, Ubisoft, place like that, down to your 1, 2, 3, 4 person studios, and then companies like us kind of sit in the middle. We're not really small enough to be indie anymore, but we don't have the 1,000-person teams that you can sort of get at AAA studios. So there's a huge range of places to go. But yeah, the number one thing is, no matter what, you have to get your name out there, because it just makes it so much easier. Day in the life of a dev. Oh.
What did so I'm going to interrupt you there, Dan. when did you decide that you wanted to do programming, or specifically games programming? Did you know that you wanted to do it, or was it something that you kind of ended up in?
I wasn't even planning on studying computer science at university. That's how late it kind of changed for me. I first picked up programming at about the age of 13. What options did you pick at 16, then at 18? That's a really good question, actually, and I will get to that, I promise. Yeah, I started programming at the age of about 13. I got my start with an engine called RPG Maker, which is pretty ancient at this point, but I just kind of, you could make little scripts that did little things in the game, and I would sort of download those, mess around with them, see, if I change this, it does that. And it was sort of very basic at the time. I didn't really understand what I was doing, but I did enjoy it. So for me, the sort of enjoyment of programming did start at a young age, but I was planning on going down another path. My options at 16, so I had to have four optional subjects, obviously all of the regular stuff. I had, you had to do maths, English, all the sciences, IT, stuff like that. When I was at school, computer science hadn't really taken off as a GCSE option yet, so that wasn't something I was able to do until A-level at that point. So yeah, my options at 16, so that would have been going into A-levels, I think. I chose biology, chemistry, computer science, and maths. At the time, I was originally planning on heading into biochemistry because that was, I guess, what I was really passionate about at the time. And then, and I'm probably not the only person this is going to happen to without being too depressing, I missed the requirements to get my place at uni for biochemistry. So I kind of had to sit down with a couple of my teachers, and I thought, I do really enjoy computer science. I will see if there's any computer science spots through clearing. And yeah, and now I'm here. So yeah, at 18, I started a computer science course at Newcastle University. And obviously it differs heavily between universities, but at Newcastle, everybody did the same first 2 years, and then the final year is when you have to decide, do you want to sort of be a generalist or do you want to pick your field? And I did a degree eventually based on that was game development focused. Yeah, so but obviously that differs between universities. That may not be entirely applicable to you. But yeah, like I was originally in a totally different field, and yeah, sometimes it happens that you won't get the marks that you need. So be very open to not doing what you think you want to do now. And that, I know obviously I'm meant to be encouraging people to get into game dev, but if you find that perhaps computer science isn't your passion 2-3 years down the line, that's fine. That happens. Yeah, day in the life of a dev, solving problems, fixing things I broke. Code is very interesting. We do a lot of stuff with basically, we touch every department, because kind of what we do is we take all the cool stuff everybody else makes and put it into the game. So there's not necessarily a time when 2 days are the same, because it just kind of depends on what the project needs at the time. But generally, and I think, yeah, you'll find that if you're not familiar with Agile and Scrums, that's the way that a lot of studios work. So you'll sort of plan work in 1 to 2 week chunks, and then every morning you'll have a quick chat with the rest of your team just to see where you're at. Do you have any problems? Stuff like that. And then, yeah, you kind of do a bit of everything with programming. I've helped with implementing sound. I've implemented designs ideas. I've done a couple of things implementing animation. So yeah, you hit quite a wide field in terms of what code does. But yeah, if you want to talk about animation, because it's a lot more interesting to look at than anything I could say.
I can't see the chat, so if there are any questions in the chat, someone interrupt me and say it out loud. For some reason, while I'm sharing, I can't see the chat fields. So yeah, if there are any, please interrupt me and say them out loud. So I am Emma. I'm actually currently... We only have a team of like 6 people, so it's not super exciting. Animation is a bit of a tricky one. I have some videos that I'll share after this, so I'll probably go into more about what animation is then. But how did we get into it? So I was one of those people as a kid who always, like, I really liked art, right? I very much really liked art, really loved being creative, but I also really liked video games, and I loved being at my PC, and I loved all that kind of like bit of a mixture of tech and art. And so I kind of always wanted to be an animator, but I never knew what it was, really. I was like, I want to be an animator. I want to animate at the PC because I'm not good enough at drawing to do 2D animation. At that point, it was like 3D was becoming more of a thing. And I was like, I'm good at PCs. I want to animate. I could do it on the PC. Then I don't need to draw. That sounds great. I didn't really look into it at all, like all through school. And even the start of college, I was just like, yeah, I want to do this, but I kind of didn't expect to actually get there. It was kind of like one of those things of like a goal, but I never really looked into, okay, what do I actually need to do to get it? So at college, I ended up doing fine arts, design. Then I did computing as well. And then I did some small mini courses as well to make up that like extra chunk of time. And I did really like computing, but it definitely didn't meld with my brain. It definitely wasn't a meldy thing. Like, I like to problem solve, but it wasn't something that I picked up naturally. And then just applied for uni or for an animation course, which you'd think you need to have a bit more, but most universities nowadays, you need to show a little bit of art skills. If you have technical knowledge, that's great. But a lot of it is about like your passion. You don't necessarily have to prove it. Some universities will ask you to do a maths test or an art test, which is very simple stuff. There's not loads of maths in animation at all, but you do come across like problem solving, or you need to be have a little bit of technical mind just to figure out some things out. It's not all about just, let me make this thing pretty. So there is a little bit of that, but so yeah, it just kind of like, I guess, worked out. My course wasn't specifically for games at uni. It was character animation, which was more tailored towards film. And we did a little bit of everything. We did some 2D animation, we did some 3D modeling. I'll go into more details what these things are when I run down the departments as well. But we just did a grand scope of things. And although there was, 20 students on my university course, I think like 4 ended up leaving to go into animation. A lot of people found that they loved other parts of the pipeline because it was like the first time we actually got to try out how all of this stuff works, and to really figure out what we are more interested in. But when I left uni, I didn't get a job in animation at all for like a year and a half. Most people, when they leave uni, do get a job straight away if like they're really good at what they do. But it's hard because, again, as Dan said, I didn't have any kind of networking or connections or anything. So I ended up just doing odd jobs for a bit. Most people would give up at that point, but I knew that I really wanted to do it, and I knew that I just wasn't quite there yet. So I did a lot of my own personal work. I kept at it. Although, like, you know, it's very discouraging. You just got a university degree and now you're like, yeah, I can get a job now, and then you don't get a job. But I ended up working.
Sorry, can I interrupt
Yes.
there, because there's a question in the chat. Do you think students have to go to uni to succeed in your area?
I don't think they have to succeed, but I feel like it does give you a lot of the foundations for it, of working as a team and seeing how other people do things. Like, if you're good at animating and you have a show reel, that's generally what we look at. We don't really look at like qualifications. We don't look at what grades you got. It's kind of proved by the work that you show us. However, I think to like learn those skills and to get them, going to university is a great thing, because you end up doing collaborative stuff together. You work in teams, you work with other disciplines, and it will really help you build a strong foundation in your work. So it's not essential, but I would highly like recommend aiming to do that, because it is worthwhile. Was there something else, Dan?
No, I would just add from my perspective that the university course didn't really teach me a whole lot, but from my point of view, university teaches you how to learn, if that makes sense. You learn a lot of research skills. It may sound extremely stupid, but learning how to Google something correctly is a massive skill. And it does help having that degree, because a lot of places, I'm not entirely sure how our hiring works because I'm not involved in it, but a lot of places will not necessarily look at you if you don't have that degree, and it does kind of suck, but yeah.
Yeah. A lot of times it's a university like equivalent degree. Sometimes it may not be like specifically an animation degree, but it could be like, you know, if you had a computer science degree but your animation was really good, so it's kind of relevant degree, because a lot of this stuff people tend to move around and do bits and pieces from other places. It's not like, oh, you're set in stone, now you have to stay in this place. So it's a relevant university group, but a lot of bigger companies especially won't even look at your application unless you do have a degree. It doesn't really matter so much like the grade of that degree, but it matters that you just have it, because they know that you've been through all these things and that you've worked as a team and you've done this and you've learned how to do this research, things like that. I will say, yeah, I had a similar experience to Dan, that I didn't really learn what it was like to animate. I didn't really learn how to animate properly until after I left university, but it gave me those foundations to like build upon it and figure it out. So when I did eventually get a job, I got a job for Tombola, the bingo company, and it was just doing little sprite animations. It was not really the kind of stuff I wanted to do. I ended up working there for 6 months, and then I felt I was really stagnating, that I wasn't really having the time to work on my own animations and do what I actually really wanted to do. So I ended up leaving and going on an online animation course just to really get some one-on-one feedback with my work and to like really improve. And honestly, that was like the best thing that I could do. At the time, you're in a paying job. Why would you quit it? It was a risky thing, but you kind of sometimes, if you know that's what you want to do, or if you really know that you're not happy, then sometimes you do have to take those risks. And I feel like sometimes people settle and then maybe a few years later they regret it, or, you know, it's always just, if you feel like you need to do something, just do it. And if you feel like a few years after that you want to do something else, just do it. Like, listen to kind of what you want. And then eventually I did get a job at Coatsink, which was my first games company position, and I'd never worked on games and I didn't know how to do any of the technical stuff, but I did learn it myself because I knew how to animate. I just hadn't done any of that technical stuff. I ended up being the first 3D animator they hired back when there was only 12 people, and 6 years later I'm now head of the department, and I just kind of fell into that head of department role from being the first one there, and now we're a company of like 100. So I was very much there from the start, going for all of this. But you really do find that you learn so much, and you are always like learning things and figuring stuff out. I think the main thing I didn't think about going into video games is that how collaborative it is. Like, you spend so much time interacting with other people, trying to understand their perspective. It's like we're pulling all these pieces together to make this final product. And even if you sit down and you play that game by yourself, it's a one-player game, and you feel like you're isolated, a lot of people put in a lot of passion to get that together. And it's really nice when you can bounce off other people, come up with ideas, like you really feel like you're involved in it. And it can be very rewarding, even if it can be very stressful at times. It has this like really high mix of super rewarding or super stressful, but it kind of balances out. So yeah, there is a lot of stress as well with games. But it's that balance of it that people don't really realize sometimes. It's like, oh, video games, that sounds cool, that sounds really fun. Like, yes, it is very cool, it is very fun, but there's also, it's hard, there's a lot of hard things to it, but that's kind of what makes it more rewarding. A day in the life. I'd say right now being in management is not too exciting, but when I was back at doing animation every day, we kind of do a lot of everything. Sometimes we go out and record references of ourselves doing things to see what they move like. We'll sit down, maybe do some storyboards. Sometimes we'll do some animatics. A lot of times we're sitting in our software, basically just animating at the PC. Sometimes we're playing the video games to feel like, okay, what does this actually look like in game? Like, what does it feel like? Is this too distracting? Does this need to be cooler? So there's lots of different bits and pieces throughout the whole thing that kind of like, not every day is going to be the same. There'll be chunks of time where you spend a lot of time on one thing. So for instance, when we were working on, we did a Jurassic World VR title. When we were working on that in pre-production, I spent like a month researching raptors, like a whole month researching raptors. How did they move? Like, okay, well, no one's seen them in real life. How did they move in the films? What's the mechanics of their limbs? Like, how does their weight get distributed? And it's like, this is where the kind of more technical side comes into it, like that interest in like how does things physically move, and then to push it into, how do I make this more appealing, even though it's not necessarily accurate, but it looks better. So that's where the creative and technical aspect kind of comes into it. I'll just go to the next slide and just show some little nice videos, because everyone loves videos. So top right here is a character from one of our games. It was a game about robots. This I did in my personal time. Did a little stylized, bouncy, squash and stretch little robot. So sometimes we'll be doing stuff like this. This is actually from the animation software. So it's more fun, it's more bouncy and lively. Bottom left here, this is a video of animation I did for the raptor just walking. And this is like a cycle that we have in game of when the raptor's walking around the environment. So again, it's more realistic. We've had to try and make it look like it could actually exist in the world. And again, you know, you spend a lot of time figuring out, oh, maybe this will feel better, or maybe this will feel better. And then here is a little cutscene that I did for one of our VR titles. This is just full-on acting. We didn't use motion capture. And this does take a lot. This is kind of the longer kind of process. You have to really think about what kind of emotion you're having, doing all the lip sync and all the facial stuff. I'm not sure if you guys can hear sound.
I'm not getting any sound.
Ah, okay, that's fine. It's more entertaining, the sound. Obviously she's talking and there's like ambience and stuff like that, but I just wanted to showcase like different pieces or different kind of styles of animation that we kind of work on. It just really depends on the game, but that's what kind of makes it so interesting. You kind of find the style that will suit that game the most. And it's basically like puppeteering. You get a character and then you just move its limbs around, and you have some keys and you move it, and it sounds kind of simple, but to get into it, it's really hard to make things feel correct, even if they aren't correct. But I could talk on all day, so I'm not going to talk on all day. Were there any questions, I guess? Was there anything in the chat about animation specifically before we move on?
There's no other questions at the moment in the chat.
Cool.
I'll keep an eye on it.
Oh, go back. Okay, wait 1 second. So I'll let Dan go through the first of these. Basically, we broke down all the departments that we have in our company. Most companies will have these departments, but they're things that you don't even think about. And these are just loads of different things that have loads of different skill sets that basically come off from like computer science or art or, you know, all these other things. Sometimes even not, say, producers and marketing. They're definitely much more, a lot of them have done English or history or, you know, there's definitely different kind of ways, but I'll get into it. I'll let Dan cover the first few.
There is a question now, so you get to talk again. How long would a typical animation take to develop, for example, the dino walking?
The dino walking, I think I did in 3 days. But a lot of that, it could have been done faster, but I spent a long time really trying to make it feel good. The little robot in top right, I did in an hour. So got an hour for the little robot. Dinosaur took 3 days. And then that cutscene that I did with the girl, that took about 3 months. So it really depends like what you're doing. Sometimes it's like a short thing that you can just like done. Sometimes you really need to break it down. The length of the shot also makes a dramatic difference. So the shots, particularly for VR that we made, we don't have scene cuts. So in films, Disney films, you have cuts and that's a different scene. So that's a different animation. Whereas in VR, it has to be one complete long clip, which can really take its toll. I hope that answers the question. Cool. Do you want to
Looks
go?
like everything's, yeah, I'll start on on this. Yeah, there's a huge number of different departments. I am most familiar with the top 4, so I shall be talking through those. So yeah, there's a whole lot of different kinds of artists. The field is absolutely massive. Concept art is, or it generally it's 2D art rather than 3D art. It's you're often, as a concept artist, you're often doing paint overs. You're basically giving the 3D artists a rough idea of what you want so they can go out and make it. It's kind of in the name, I suppose. But yeah, you'll often kind of iterate again and again and again with the stakeholders, the designers, to make sure they're happy, and you'll be doing the same thing quite a bit as a concept artist, but which isn't necessarily a bad thing because you are making it better every time. 3D artist, there's all kinds of 3D artists in the world. You have environment artists, you have character artists, you have artists that work in sort of more stylized environments versus realistic environments. Yeah, this is kind of difficult to explain, but you generally take the concept ideas, make them, and then pass them off to somebody who can put them into the game, where if that needs some code support to make your objects do things, or you may pass it off to an animator like Emma if it's something that needs to be made to move. Yeah, this is definitely, if you're interested in 3D art, you definitely have to do some research of your own to see which bits of it you're interested in, because most 3D artists aren't generalists. They'll tend to have a field within 3D art that they prefer to do. Designer, as a designer, it's your responsibility to make the game fun. your job as a designer is you'll often do what we call blockouts. So you'll take very simple art sets and kind of roughly lay the level out in Engine. You'll be doing play testing, and yeah, the designers are kind of the core of what happens. You kind of obviously, you know, you'll have multiple designers on a project often, and they'll do little bits each. But yeah, what does, like it says on the slide, what does the player do? What are the puzzles? How to make it fun? There's obviously a lot more to design than that, because a lot of it is game specific. But yeah, it's a lot of thinking and a lot of writing. Programming. This is a little bit of a simple way of putting it, but yeah, like I said, sort of when I was talking earlier, we work with a lot of other departments, taking their stuff and making it work in the game. For simple assets like some sort of props and things, we don't necessarily touch a lot of that. It usually just the artists can handle that themselves. But yeah, animation, sound, VFX 10s especially, and obviously, you know, implementing the designs that the designers make, we often have quite a big hand in working closely with the other departments to make sure that everything is going in and they're happy with it. And seeing as the next one's animation, I will let Emma describe that.
I'll quickly go through just how you get level, because obviously I've talked about it a lot already. But yeah, anything in the game that moves, really. So the more exciting things, creatures, monsters, obviously, animating people. But we also do things like, how does this door open? Or how does this mechanical thing move across? Which is not as exciting, but you can really learn some good foundation stuff. But it's basically, if it moves, you need to make it look good, because normally it just won't. If you go boop boop, it doesn't look nice. SFX, making the audio. What does a monster sound like? And honestly, we all love our SFX guys. They go out. The storm we had like a few weeks ago, one of our guys was recording his attic to get recordings of sounds of the storm to use in one of our games. So again, theirs is quite, they're going out, they're recording things, they're pulling it all together, they're trying to imagine like what it all sounds like, how is it going to flow together, and then leveling out mixes. So how loud should this be? How quiet should this be? You know, all to give that feeling and that tone of the game that you're playing. VFX, which is H2FX, which, to be honest, I hadn't really thought about, but you generally have people specializing in this. So like, how do you make a fire, or how do you make an explosion? If you're firing a gun, what does like the little muzzle flash look like? And a lot of this is all in Unity, but sometimes that you can create hand-drawn animations for this stuff as well, whereas that kind of comes into like maybe some 2D animation as well. So a lot of our VFX guys are really good at a lot of things. They're like very, very technical, but they also have an eye for art. You kind of need to have an eye for what looks appealing. It's not just about technical stuff. So a lot of this stuff is really interesting, but I don't understand it at all. QA. So this is something that a lot of people do start to want to go in, because a lot of times you don't need a relevant degree or anything like that. You don't need to specialize in anything to be able to go and apply for a QA position. It is playing the game over and over and over again, which sounds like fun initially, but it can get tiring. You basically just try and find bugs, and then once you found a bug, you need to try and do it again. And you're basically doing everything you think of to break the game. So when a player comes to play the game, they don't break it, and then they can't play it anymore. It takes like, I don't know how they do it. I can play a game for like all day, every day, and just try and find these things. But a lot of people really love it. And again, some people do tend to join QA, and then after like a year or two ask to be like, oh, can I become a junior designer, or can I do that? So that is also another route getting into games, because it's not as specific. You don't need to have a certain skill set to get into it. So that is something that to think about as well. And producers, again, giving the team all the tools to make the game and time planning and organizing. This is the most like probably company specific, like as a generic company, we still need those people to come in and go, hey, you can't spend 6 hours on this thing. I know you want to make it look nice, but we need to get a game finished. So they're the ones to really rein us in, to keep us all on track, to really figure out like, okay, we have this deadline. We need to make sure we get these things and these things done. So they're the ones that kind of really oversee everything. And then we have marketing. And again, marketing, if you don't have a marketing team or anyone, no one knows your game exists. So they can't play it because they don't know it exists out there. So marketing is a very big thing. Like a lot of times we want to invest in setting up ads and marketing campaigns just to make people know about these games so that they want to play them. Oh yeah, I was going to say about producers as well. A lot of our producers don't have a relevant gaming university degree, but a lot of them, like I said previously, have like say an English degree or maybe a management degree or something like that. So they're not even from like computer sciences or anything, but it's obviously those things do link into time plan because they're kind of listening to us. Like we have the skills and we tell them, okay, this is how it works, and they're like, okay, I'll go away and figure this thing out for us. So they do a lot more of that management stuff that like we just don't have the time to do. And again, for marketing, I'm not sure what degrees our marketing team have, but I think it's a lot similar. It's more about dealing with people, organizing things, time planning things. It's not something that you'll actually be working on the game itself. So you don't need to have like a computing degree to be able to do that. You might, like, I think we have some people doing social media stuff. So obviously that's all like Facebook, Instagram, all that kind of thing, YouTube stuff. Yeah. Does anyone have any, actually, before we have questions? So does anyone have any questions?
I do want to add as well that for the VFX, not everybody's a pure artist in VFX. We have a few tech artists who touch the graphics side, the graphics programming side of things, and the art side of things. And yeah, those people scare me because I don't understand how you do both.
Tech art is a very niche job, but it is so highly valuable. Like we are always seeking tech artists because they do need to have that eye for art, but also to be able to do all these technical things. And to make everything look better and run better, and it's like wizardry, even for us.
What are the typical salaries in the different roles, and is the company making a good profit? I guess probably the best place to start here is with junior roles, because I think that's probably the most relevant to sort of to what everybody's going into. I will be honest. The games industry is not a high-paying industry. There's no getting around that. I think generally, as a junior, at the moment, obviously it'll change over time with wages going up, but as a starter, depending on which sort of department you go into, you'll probably start off at around 18 to 20,000 ish. Does that sound about right, Emma, for animation and such?
Yeah.
Is the company making a good profit? I obviously don't have access to the financials and things, but given the current situation of the world, gaming's become quite an important thing. So I would be very inclined to say that the company is probably making a good profit, especially seeing as we're now owned by a bigger company. So
yeah, I will say on this that as we are going from a 12 people company up until what we got now 100, a lot of the times we made a prototype or a demo of a game and then we went and showed it to get funding for it. So we have really good connections with Oculus, which is why we ended up doing a lot of VR games. And so what happens is we don't have to come up with the funds to make that game. They'll pay us to make the game, and then we get a share of the revenue at the end. But obviously that links us into like milestones and stuff, but it means it's not as risky for us. We're not investing all of our money into making these games. They will tend to get more money of the revenue back from the games, but it's a lot better for us as a company because we don't have as much risks involved. And so a lot of our games work like that. We get funding from other people to be able to make them, and building up that communication as well with other companies to be able to do this. We do self-fund a few of our titles. I don't think we can announce any of them because NDAs are a thing. But we do kind of take whatever's there from that and then try and put it into games that we really want to make. But yeah, as a company, we are comfortable. Our job security is actually very, very good at Coatsink. That is not always the case, particularly for really small indie companies. It's probably safer for big AAA companies. And I also think you do end up getting paid more at AAA companies, even for junior roles, if you can get into them, but they're very, very competitive. But yeah, when you start off in a games company, generally your pay will be really low. Like as you progress, it's not that bad. Like I think it's like I'm still probably, we're not on like high pay, but it's very, very comfortable to live and to do the things you want to do. But yeah, it really depends. Like if you get into, in my position in a AAA company would be a lot more than it is right now. But in a AAA company, I would have to do a lot of things. I'd have to be very specific. I'll be working with bigger teams. I wouldn't have as much say on the games we're doing or as much input. And it's like, what do you want to do? Do you want to be really involved in it, or do you want to kind of just work on this massive game that you're working on for 6 years, which takes a lot of investment, a lot of time. Whereas 6 years in an indie company, I think I've helped produce 7 games, which is like less than a game a year. So it's kind of what you prefer, and you kind of make that commitment and knowing like, okay, I might get paid less here, but I'm going to enjoy the work more.
I've got a question, if you don't mind. Are there what game would you say has been the most popular? I'm thinking especially because obviously the pandemic, there's been a lot of gaming, maybe in the last couple of years, or is there any that's kind of really took off?
Of Coatsink games, or
yeah, Coatsink games or games.
I think it's just personal preference, but I think our Fogs game is actually like really popular because you can sit down and play it with someone else in your household. And multiplayer games, I always have a thing for multiplayer games, but I think that's just a personal preference. Obviously our Jurassic World title got a lot of praise, but being a VR title, we don't get as many people. It's not as easily accessible because you need to have a VR headset. So it's like a subset of gamers being able to play it and stuff. But anything with online multiplayer has obviously been, so I think Cake Bash and, oh god, Dan, remind me of what the moving house. Gang Beasts is also, yeah.
Get Packed is the one you're thinking of.
That's what I was thinking of, yeah. Any of the online multiplayer games are just always going to be fun investments, and we always get a lot of people playing them.
Yeah, cool. Can I just ask an extra one just on the question about going to university and things? So is it possible to go into a company like Coatsink without a degree? I know you've briefly touched on it, but if someone's really passionate kind of like in their own time and do it in their own time, could they build up a portfolio and then bring it and then possibly be a success in getting something like a junior role?
I think they could potentially. It would be harder though, because I think you don't have like that skill set. It would definitely be harder, but I don't think we as a company have anything that says you have to have a university degree. But it might be more likely that even if you have a really good portfolio as an animator, that we would rather take you on as a QA first to see and then help you build up that portfolio. Like we're doing a lot of things to help people with training and stuff, so there's probably a possibility of like, oh hey, maybe we can help you get a degree if you show this much promise. It's not something we've done before, and I know a lot of companies may not do that because obviously it's quite a risk. But I wouldn't say it's a hard no. There's definitely a chance if you are that passionate and you have that skill set.
Yeah, brilliant. Is any of the school, has the school got any more questions that you want to pop in the chat, or anything else that needs to be covered? Well, that was really interesting. I enjoyed that. Thank you.
I would just say, to sort of further Emma's point, that I think we've had like 4 or 5 people move from QA to other departments over the last few years. So obviously it's not the same at every company, but we do certainly support you in moving. If you did start in QA, we will definitely support you in moving to where you really want to be if that ends up not being QA.
Brilliant. I can just see someone typing in the chat, so we'll just see if there's another question before we wrap it up. Nope. Yeah, just saying thank you. Such a good insight. Yeah, that was really, really good. Really, really fantastic. Thank you so much. If any of the schools do have any more questions, if you just email me anything that you might think of later down the line, and then I can pass it on to yourselves, if that's okay. But that was really fantastic. Thank you so much, and thank you to the school for joining. I hope that was really insightful for your computer science students.
I will also say that we're going to send a document over for, we have each of the departments, and we have maybe some like YouTube channels or some books, just some extra bits of information. If you're like, is this something that I like? I don't know, I'll watch this 10-minute YouTube video, and then, you know, just to give a look at like all the different departments and see like what is out there. Because I think very early in computer science, you don't really know and you're not really sure, but I think it's just, yeah, we'll send that over, and hopefully that will help you if you find there's something here that maybe has tickled your interest.
Yeah, I'll pass that over as soon as possible. Yeah. Just waiting for someone. Oh, great for me, media students.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much. I'm just going to stop the recording there. As I say, for the schools, if you do have anything in the meantime, just let me know, and I'll send the documents out to yourselves as well. But thank you so much, Dan and Emma. That was fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.